Hey, we're going to have to turn off the TV for a little while. Can you go sit at Daddy's chair in his desk? I'm not going to leave you, baby. I'm going to be right out there. The town of Dish is 2 square miles. It's about 150 people. And in 2005, the town changed its name to Dish in exchange for Free Dish Network. So everybody in the city gets Free Dish Network for a period of 10 years. We have 10 huge, massive lines coming through here, or meeting here. Those 10 lines carry 1 billion cubic feet of gas a day. So we have 10 billion cubic feet of gas going through the town of Dish every day.
At most places where pipelines converge, there are compressor stations, huge turbine engines that compress the gas into the pipeline.
Pipelines are designed to have this release where they're shooting natural gas into the air. Of course, they tell you that this all shoots up goes straight to the moon and there's none of it lingering around. There's a cloud lingering over one of our subdivisions. When things like this happen, most of the people in the community think that they've just taken their last breath.
Calvin Tillman was so frustrated with the TCEQs in action that he commissioned his own air study. The results read sort of like the back of a pamphlet that you don't want to pick up at the American Cancer Society. The study found, and I quote, amazing and very high levels of known and suspected human carcinogens and neurotoxins. These chemicals include benzene, dimethyl disulfide, methyl ethyl disulfide, ethyl methyl ethyl disulfide, trimethylbenzene, diethylbenzene, methyl methyl ethyl benzene, tetramethylbenzene, naphthalene 1,2,4, trimethylbenzene, MNP xylenes, carbonyl sulfide, carbon disulfide, methylpyridine, and diamethylpyridine. Benzene in the air was at 55 times the public health standard. Carbon disulfide was at 107 times the health standard. The report states that acute impacts to health will occur with these concentrations of chemicals in the air. The cancer and neurotoxins will also have an impact over the long term.
And one of the sites, it's kind of humorous, but it's not humorous, is that there's a sign that says no open flames, no smoking, and then there's a barbecue grill sitting underneath it. You know, so some guy is going to be cooking his hamburger one day and blow up the town.
One of the problems with the Clean Air Act is that it tends to focus on the largest single sources. But the oil and gas sector isn't just one large facility. So you have these massive companies like Devon, ConocoPhillips, who, because out in their gas fields or on their oil fields have thousands of little sources, each of those little sources is exempted from the Clean Air Act. Now, the accumulated emissions from those thousands of sources are huge. It can apply to many different places because there's lots of different communities that are sitting right on top of shale formations. If the drilling happens in those formations the way it happened in Fort Worth, very unregulated, Wild West, then it'll be a real tragedy because we learned our lesson here, that you've got to stay on top of this. You've got to look at the issues as it's happening and don't wait until you've had development for 10 years the way we did. Because then it's just a big mess.
If the cumulative air emissions in Texas were huge, what were the cumulative water impacts like?
This whole area produces, and the groundwater is contaminated from the production, from the drilling, from the old pits in this entire area, contaminated with a lot of the heavy metals like barium, which is the weighting agent in drilling fluids, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead. I have a number of clients who were like exercise buffs and things that drank, huge quantities of water each day.
Right.
And they were getting arsenic poisoning. They'd go to the hospitals and the doctor would ask their spouse to step out and they'd go like, do you think your spouse is poisoning you?
And this part of Louisiana and the Gulf of Mexico, just to the south, has been receiving oil and gas waste for 60 years. 1/3 of all the natural gas in America passes through the Henry Hub. This is where we take all the byproducts, all the wastewater, throw it out to sea, hope it doesn't come back. During the hurricanes of Rita and Katrina, it did come back.
It was the sediment that had accumulated in the water bodies for decades, where people had been dumping and dumping and dumping. The storm surge just scooped it up and layered it up. Here, the sediment sludge was all over the place, everywhere. just coated the land. The organics that are here on site are the benzene, toluene, xylene, ethylbenzene, a lot of formaldehyde, a lot of the semi-volatiles that are very long-lasting, like the polynuclear aromatic hydrocarbons. And then you have all the heavy metals that are associated with the drilling fluids, barium, arsenic, lead, cadmium, chromium, mercury. And all of those chemicals are there in the tanks, in the flood walls, in the heater treaters, in the storage tanks. But there's no protection from the storm surge. Everything that you see below an elevation of 6 feet, all that contamination, all those products got washed into the environment.
And this happened all over where the storms hit?
All along the coast, in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas.
How many sites is there?
How many sites?
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of sites.
I tried to wrap my head around what Wilma was saying. The slow accumulation of 50 years of drilling that had created a permanent contamination situation in southern Louisiana that could probably never be fully cleaned. And the thought of the entire coastline from Mississippi over to Texas being contaminated with oil and gas waste made me think about what the effects could be of this drilling on all the rivers that I'd visited. I'd seen a map that showed you actually what the river systems in the United States really looked like. They weren't these skinny lines like veins, but something much more comprehensive. And with all of these major waterways under duress of 34-state drilling campaign, I wondered just how extensive the damage would be if this continued for much longer. I was on my way home. All I wanted to do was clear my head, think things through, get out of crisis mode. The phone rang again. It was the water testing lab. The mysterious yellowish-brownish jar of liquid from Dimmock had given up some of its secrets. Barium and strontium are drilling muds. They're lubricants for the drill bit. Iron and chloride and conductivity were extremely high. With pure distilled water, you have a conductivity of 0. This was off the charts. But the scariest and most difficult part of the test to get my head around were two things I'd never heard of: total Keldol nitrogen and MBAS, or methylene blue active substance. MBAS are reactive agents that turn blue when it comes into contact with detergents or surfactants. Now, detergents don't sound so bad. You wash your laundry with them. But you don't want to drink a detergent. And you certainly don't want to drink a surfactant. Everything that enters one of your cells enters through a surface.
Do it again, Plums.
A surfactant will allow oil or other substances to pass through surfaces by dissolving them. So if a surfactant gets into a stream near fish, it'll dissolve the fish's gills. So what could one little jar of yellowish-brownish liquid from Dimmock prove?
They were told to just release it into a stream. It's the same type of thing over and over and over. You've lost more than what you've gained. What have you gained? $1 bill cannot bring back what they've taken away. I think everyone is fed up with it, and everybody's afraid to say anything.
I asked my anonymous friend if she'd also talked to the DEP.
They said there was no proof, and that they needed proof in order to do something.
Well, when the DEP basically refused to help, how did you feel about that?
Like I was talking to a tree.
Oh, my tie, is that okay? There is a clear opportunity here in Pennsylvania for major new gas production.
I have one quote here from you that says that you're trying to do this in a way that doesn't damage the environment. But you also said recently that water contamination is inevitable.
Well, yeah, I mean...
are those contradictory, or...?
Here, I'll give you the direct, straight answer. There's no such thing as a perfect source of energy. It's absolutely the case that natural gas production is not perfect, and the issue of actual contamination by drilling chemicals at Dimmock has been examined at 39 homes. We've looked, done independent testing, and there's been no contamination of the drinking water by those chemicals found.
Well, actually, I have in here, samples that are from all over the country. This one's from Wyoming, Colorado, and then one here from Dimmock. Now, this is tap water. In other words, drinking water. And I'm wondering if you're interested in drinking some of this.
No, and absolutely, I'm not interested in people in Dimmock, and we've stopped it. What I'm doing in Dimmock is absolutely to deal with the problem that you're addressing. It's the very last thing in the world we want anybody to do is to drink it.
There's only 4 households that water is being replaced by.
Those are the households where the problem exists. If there were 10 households, we would require it for 10. If there were 15 households, we would require it for 15. If there's an individual who's had their water contaminated by gas migrating that's not getting their water replaced, I want to know about it. Every single person who has had that occur to us has their water replaced. The bottom line is what matters. We're not going to allow folks who have had their water contaminated as a result of drilling to sit there and have to drink that kind of water. One of the things about being on that side of the camera and this side of the camera, you guys get to, at some level, wash your hands of everything. The folks on this side of the camera have to make some real decisions in the real world. And until somebody comes up with, I guess, the hydrogen economy, I don't have perfect answers to all these things. And I have to make trade-offs. And those trade-offs recognize that you're often taking 2 steps forward and perhaps 1 step back. And that's a lot of the decision-making that goes on right now.
I actually view it in the opposite way, as not a person behind the camera, as a person who lives in Pennsylvania, as a person whose water is in jeopardy. Do you really believe that it's adequate to replace water with cisterns? Can you replace a stream?
Well, replace a stream? Which one do you live on?
Calkins Creek, which is a tributary to the Delaware.
Okay. Well, you see a problem there. I want to know about it. And this is a serious point.
That's where this whole project starts.
Right. That's exactly right. We have a good staff here, and they're out there on the sites. But we're also absolutely eager for the public to let us know about problems. Look. No, I know. Here's the card,
Just a few short months after this interview, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection suffered the worst budget cuts in history, amounting to over 350 full-time positions being eliminated and 25% of their total budget cut. In the midst of what could be the largest natural gas drilling campaign in Pennsylvania history. How much water could you replace?
So I'm going to show you a little bit here on the map where New York City and New Jersey and Philadelphia's water comes from. What you have up here in the green area, that's the New York City watershed. It's supposedly a protected area, although all of this area on the map that you see here is slated for gas drilling. The green and white areas you see on the map, that's the New York City watershed and the Delaware River Basin. Altogether, the combined watershed supplies water to 15.6 million people. 6.8 million in New York City, 5.4 million in Pennsylvania, 700,000 in Delaware, and 2.9 in New Jersey. It's the largest unfiltered water supply in the world. The reservoirs were created 100 years ago. Industry has leased hundreds of thousands of acres within the New York City watershed and the Delaware River Basin. That could mean 50,000 gas wells in the combined watershed area. As of spring 2010, there is no drilling in the New York City watershed or the Delaware River Basin. But that could change any day now.
When we look at other planets in the solar system, what are we looking to find?